All right, good morning and welcome to ThinkTest. I'm truly thrilled to actually see so many people by this time, which is not a typical Delhi, but very nice. And thank you so much for making it all the way. We're very, very honored to have James Bach here to speak for us and to actually, it's a great opportunity for you to meet him and know about context-driven testing. I just want to, instead of actually talking about each of the sponsors, which is important to do because a lot of us did get some complimentary tickets, a lot of us got some gifts, and honestly we would not be able to afford all of it if we didn't have support from our gracious sponsors, so thanks to them. We tried to bring James into 2013, about 2 years back, and due to other commercial, economic, and health reasons, a lot of other different reasons, we couldn't bring him. But one of the key reasons that we couldn't really make it happen was also that I realized that the community here is not mobilized enough to actually come out, to actually network, to actually meet leaders and learn. But over the last 2 years, I have actually seen a dramatic difference. I have seen so many influential testers coming out of this region. Quite a few of them are speaking today. Quite a few of them are actually not in this region but have flown from Bangalore, Pune, and they're highly influential in this area. I would like to especially thank Anand Bagmar, Kapil Saxena, Atulya Mishra, and many more. I'm sorry if I'm not taking all the names, but seriously, thank you guys for actually bringing the crowd together, helping us put this together. And today is your day to learn. Don't be an Eklavya. You know who Eklavya is, right? He learns from his teacher from a distance. And he's actually one of the best, but he needs super discipline to do that. If you are that disciplined, maybe you do not need your teacher right in front of you every day. But try to be an Arjun, have a teacher. Even if you are not so disciplined, it will help you. All right, so with that, I'd like to welcome James to get started with his keynote. And one quick thing, you have a lunch tag here behind you, lunch tag given to you. When you're going for lunch, please use that. All your goodies to all attendees will be given when you're leaving. And please stay until 5 o'clock because we're going to have all our speakers felicitated by James when he's done with all his speaking. All right, so stay for the day and enjoy your learning. Thank you. Please, James.
I wasn't going to be here this year. I cut my fee by 2/3 to be here. It's not economically viable for me to do business in India. I'm here because I admire Smita. That's the reason. That's the only reason that's the main reason. I think she's doing very admirable things for women in testing and for the testing community, and I'm inspired by the hard work that she does. That is the reason I'm here, Smita. Thank you for bringing me out. Okay, and also my wife is inspired by that, which is why she sent me out here to be with Smita. So, all right, I want to talk about how testing is not test cases. Lots of people all around the world, they come to me, they want advice about testing. They say, James, what should my test cases be? What are your test cases? Can I see your test cases? Test cases, test cases, test. There are people who only think of testing in terms of test cases. And that's very strange to me because I know smoking hurts you. You won't kill you immediately. Obviously, we're all here in Delhi and we haven't dropped dead of smog inhalation yet, so we're not going to be killed immediately. But, you know, we've got to clean up the air. We've got to clean up our environment so that we can live a little longer. There's toxicity around us, and we need to take care of that and deal with that. And there's toxicity in the words we use, too. That there are certain words that encourage us to think in certain ways that make us weak instead of making us strong. And if you say something like test automation, you start thinking, oh, robots do testing. Robots do testing so much better than humans do testing. I'm not a robot, so I might as well just give up testing and let all the robots do it. And that's toxic. So I don't use the term test automation, but I do use the term test cases. I just don't use it very much because I don't find it a very useful idea. Basically, here's what a test case is. It's a bag. It's a bag and there's some stuff in it. That's it. It's all you know when someone says here's a test case is they've shown you a box. Like here's a thing that there's some. I do use the term test cases. I just don't use it very much because I don't find it a very useful idea. Basically, here's what a test case is. It's a bag. It's a bag and there's some stuff in it. That's it. It's all you know when someone says here's a test case is they've shown you a box. Like here's a thing that there's something inside of, but you can't see it unless you look inside the test case and you see what's in there. But just saying it's a test case is to say here's a thing with stuff, and then we say, well, where are your test cases then is saying, where's your pile of boxes? Where's your bags of testing stuff? And that seems to me a very strange way to think. Because testing is a performance. Testing is what testers do. That's what I want to get across to you. Smita, I'm going to need time support because I forgot to set my alarm and now I'm too jazzled to set it. So can someone give me a warning when I've got 5 minutes left, please? I would really appreciate that. Okay, let me show you something. Here is a video of some testing that I did on a product called Focuswriter. Now, Focuswriter is just a word processor, and it lets you write novels without distracting you. It's a low distraction interface. This is actually what it looks like, and you can have it in full screen mode, and you see there's nothing on the screen. You just type your novel, blah, 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 okay? And that's all it is. It's a tool for novelists to write stuff. It's an open source piece of software, and it's a product that I use in my classes sometimes. And it has this feature called the Scene Selector panel, which is right here. It's right stuck in the side of it. And the Scene Selector panel lets you do things like have, I think I have to set my settings here, preferences, let's just turn it to that. It lets you have multiple scenes in your novel, and all you have to do is separate them by whatever the string is, which in this case is a couple of hash marks. And then you see now I have 2 entries in the Scene Selector panel, and I can do things like move the order of the scenes. So there's a scene up here, I want to move it down, and it lets me move the scenes around like I just did here. And it's nice if you're writing a play or a novel with a bunch of scenes in it, and maybe you decided that a scene should go earlier in the story. You can get your overview, and it also lets you filter. So if I type in something into the filter thing, it just shows me what matches that. So it's a pretty straightforward little panel. Well, I decided to test this panel, which, by the way, has no documentation for it. So I tested it. And this is a video of 30 minutes of that testing. What I'm trying to do is figure out what does it do. I'm exploring its aspects. I'm finding out what's here. I'm finding out its patterns. I use a counter string right there, which is a string that counts its own length. And I have a tool which creates these very long strings. And the great thing about a counter string is whenever you break up a counter string, you always know what character position it's broken up at, because it has the numbers and the asterisks that count the position of the text in that string. So I'm using crafted data, and I'm building theories about what this thing does and how the Scene Selector panel works. And this is, if I were to play it and narrate it, it would be 36 minutes that I would have to narrate my testing. One of the reasons why it's hard to talk about testing, my friends, is that in order to really talk about testing, it's a slow process of talking about real fiddly different, why did I press that button instead of that button? Why am I doing this test instead of that test? How do I make sense of what's happening here? And it's very hard to get that across in a 45-minute talk. So I just want you to know I did it. Here's the video. Because I want you to remember from your own testing, when you were designing tests, not when you were following scripts, because following scripts is not really testing. But when you were designing those scripts, whoever was designing the tests, when you're designing your own tests, it's that process which is a learning process. It's a crafting process. It's an exploration process. You have to go through the stuff that I'm talking about here. Some people say, well, I derive my test cases from the requirements. No, you don't. You derive your test cases, if you derive them at all, from your understanding of the requirements, not from the requirements themselves. You have to read the requirements. You have to go, what does this really mean? That's the brain part. That's the performance part. And it amazes me that managers often think that, well, it's just easy. Anyone who can read English can understand the exact same requirement in exactly the same way, and they'll understand it instantly. They'll just read it once and they'll go, I get it. I know exactly everything I need to do to test now. No, you don't. I'm pretty smart. No one ever accuses me about James. He's so dim-witted, and he doesn't read anything, and he hasn't studied the craft. I've been in this craft for 30 years, and I've studied it, and I have a great reputation when it comes to that. I've written several books, and I can tell you that no matter what you give me to test, I don't know what to do to test it in the first few minutes. I get ideas, and I know I'm going to throw those ideas away. Now, if I am not confident that I can read requirements and go, oh yeah, I know exactly what the test case should be. Yes, boom. How can you think you know what the test case should be? Of course you're going to have ideas. I'm not saying you don't have ideas. And of course some of those ideas are going to turn out to be good ideas that you're going to carry through even months later. But we should never be looking at something or some requirements document and say, oh, it's just a simple matter of deriving the test cases from the requirements document, like you're turning some kind of crank on a paper shredder that's slowly shredding the paper, and then out of it comes test cases. That's not how this works. It's a crafting process. You put the ingredients into your mind and you kind of mix them around, and ideas start happening like microwave popcorn. That's what testing design is like for me. It's like microwave popcorn. I put the cold popcorn in the microwave and I turn it on, and at first nothing happens. And then you hear pop, 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 and those are the ideas that start clicking off. You go, oh, I've got an idea. I want to do that when I test it. Oh, I have an even better idea. And then you do a little bit of testing and you get an even better idea. So I performed this testing, and this is what I decided to do in this case. Because there was no documentation of how this worked, and because I had no access to the developer, I decided that my first part of testing this, if I want to test it really well, is to write out exactly what does this feature do. So this, because I didn't have any documentation, this is everything I know about what this product does, this part of the product, this panel. The C-list panel is resizable. Okay, that's an easy one. You know what? I didn't actually discover that in the 36-minute video. I discovered it afterwards. In the 36-minute video, during that process, I discovered 18 things that the scene panel does, and I then gave it to a group of people who I challenged to test the same thing and find anything that I missed. And a bunch of things were found, and one of the things people found is, hey, you know, you can resize this panel. And I had no idea because I had never tried to resize the panel. It just didn't occur to me to make the panel bigger. And that turns out to affect some other functionality that I had already been looking at. So it's actually important that this panel is resizable. So that was caught by other testers. And this sort of simulates a situation where you explore a product, you say, now I know what it does. And then later on you find out, oh, I wasn't quite right about that. You know, 2 weeks later you're testing the same thing and you realize, I wasn't quite right. So my test cases, if I had created them, are not going to be quite right either, because they would have been based on ignorance. We're constantly learning, and our learning informs our testing. And testing is learning. It's a performance that unfolds over time. Now, I created something which is a specialized data file that looks like this. This specialized data file systematically helps me test the filtering functionality and the reordering functionality in the scene selector panel. So after I played with this for this 36 minutes, I had this idea for systematically creating a data file. We were talking about data management. And I thought, what would be really good data management for this? So I constructed a special file. And this special file, I think I have in my little demo thing. I think it's right here, and here it is. Now I have not only created this data file, but I put a little bit of documentation into the data file in order to help future testers who might try to use this data file. So it's a really long data file that has several thousand sections in it. And you see there's a description of what this data file is trying to do. Here's some test ideas. Are these test cases? Where are the test cases here? Maybe these are test cases. I call them test ideas. They're processed by the tester, like move sections. I'm recommending that the tester move sections. So let's look at this. Now this only has one section in it according to this. That's because I have to set this to, I think I have to say section. There we go. Section is the string that separates all the things now. So now what I can do is I can look at this file, and now I'm systematically testing it. Now this file is arranged so that all the sections are randomly ordered, except that for each section, like section 36, for instance, it has 100 subsections. Well, actually, no. Section 36 has exactly 36 subsections. Let me do one that's a little easier. You know what? I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to say 06. I'm going to filter by 06 dot. And 06 dot should... 06 dot. There we go. That's going to zero in on section 6. Now section 6 has 6 subsections. So that means if I know that that's true about my data file, I know I should see exactly 6 subsections here, and they're in order. So they're randomly distributed through this huge file with thousands of sections, but I know that they should come out in order 1 through 6, 0601, 0602, 0603, 0604, 0605, 0606. There, I've got exactly that number, and so this is a pass. So that's how I use this data file. Now, I hope you recognize that as ordinary testing. What I want to get across to you, what I want you to think about, is where's the test case here? Is it even reasonable to talk about this as a test case? Is the file itself a test case? Is the program that I wrote that creates this file, that's this right here, is that the test case? Is the different test ideas the test case? And by the way, I went through 5 versions of this idea for the data file. I started with this really simple idea of let's just number the sections and just put X's in there. And as I went along, I got more sophisticated about it. So is that 5 test cases? Because I did test with each one of these. Is that 5 test cases? Is it 1 test case? Different versions of the same test case? I hope what you're seeing is the absurdity of counting test cases, certainly. As soon as I assign a number to it and just say, I have 5 test cases, your correct response to me should be, I have no idea what you're talking about. That is what, after studying testing for 30 years, when people say I have 500 test cases, I always say the same thing. I have no idea what that means. If someone thinks they know what that means, they are wrong. They do not know what that means unless they have witnessed that testing. Unless they have seen the testing happen, they don't know what 500 test cases are. So if you probably work for clients, you probably have bosses who want you to show them pass rate graphs and talk about how many test cases you have. Just start thinking about how you are telling them nothing when you say, I have 1,000 test cases. When you show pass rate graphs and you say 90% pass, you're telling them nothing. Is that the 90% of the easiest possible things that pass, and it's the 10% of the really good test cases that fail? Or is it just a few little unimportant test cases that fail and all the really good ones pass? 90% doesn't tell me. So I don't count test cases, but also test cases aren't even testing. The testing is when the human mind engages with the testing process and with the product. That's testing. And we don't talk about that as test cases, really. We talk about that as a test activity. I'm arguing we should talk about it as a test activity. Now, the 36-minute video I showed you, I analyzed that video after I did it. I mean, I did it intuitively, and then I went back to the video and I walked through it carefully, and I made a note of every kind of problem-solving pattern, every kind of heuristic. That's what that word means. A heuristic is a fallible method of solving a problem. We are always using heuristics all the time. Each of us uses heuristics. I urge you to learn the word heuristic and use that word. So I use heuristics when I test. I use patterns that help me do testing. And I've listed and named every one that I could find in my testing in 36 minutes. Are these test cases? Of course not. I'm going to pick one right now, the Levy flight heuristic. I learned about Levy flights from a student a couple of years ago who said, have you heard about Levy flights? I'm like, no, I don't know what. And then I looked it up on Wikipedia. We all use this heuristic. I use it consciously now instead of unconsciously. And a big part of my practice of becoming an excellent tester is to use my heuristics consciously, to choose them instead of falling into them, because you fall into them all the time. We all fall into our heuristics. But what I am able to do over time, I'm able to do this very well now, and I help other people do it. There's like a little bell that goes off and you go, oh, remember there's other parts of the product too. So you kind of switch into a different mode of get shallow for a while and just see a bunch of things but not go deep. And then you find another place that's kind of unstable, and then you get deep into that again. Well, now you know there's a name for that. There's a name for that. Sometimes you're shallow, sometimes you're deep. You're sampling the depths in different, widely disparate places. The name for that is the Levy flight. That's what it's called. And it has a mathematical character to it. I use branching and backtracking. I use galumphing. A lot of people, when they see the word galumphing, they say, what's galumphing? I'll tell you what galumphing is. Galumphing is the process of injecting inert, useless variation into your testing. You might wonder, why are we injecting useless variation? I'll give you an example of useless variation. You're supposed to type something into a field, right? Like a username field. Let's just use that old example. What a normal person does is they click on the field, they type their username, and that's what the normal person does. What a tester does is we click on the field, type something, erase it, type something, erase it, move the mouse a bunch, click on it 100 times, type something, overflow the field, back up, and then we go to the password thing. If you have ever done anything like that, you were doing galumphing. Because all those little variations you were doing where you type something and erase it, it shouldn't make any difference. It's inert. It is technically useless. Why do we do it then? We do it, and you do it unconsciously if you have any experience as a tester, because you know it maximizes the chance that you're going to run into trouble. Maximizes the chance that if there is a little instability, you are going to find it. Whereas the people who carefully click once and just type gingerly on the keyboard like it's a delicate egg that they don't want to smash, they're not going to find as many bugs as you when you are galumphing. Galumphing is, instead of walking, skipping, marching, dancing down the street, which makes no difference. Of course, you're just going from point A to point B, but you're more likely to trip and fall and then maybe face down in the gutter, and then you find, 100 rupees. You know, you find. You get yourself into trouble, into accidents, and that's what testers need. So galumphing is a process that helps us explore a space a little bit better by allowing us to have more accidental results. And that's different from injecting variation that is meaningful variation. You can also do randomizing of testing and change your test data in meaningful ways. But the key thing about galumphing is that all the changes you're making shouldn't make any difference at all to your test idea. It should be useless variation. That's what makes galumphing, and also make it very inexpensive. So I did galumphing, I did Levy flights, I did pattern recognition from experience, I did one factor at a time, a test design, I used Occam's razor, I used crafted data, I used consistency heuristics in order to detect problems. I could stand here for 90 minutes and carefully explain each one of these, but I don't have time to do that. I just want you to know these patterns are important patterns of testing performance, and that's how I work when I test. I'm not merely following instructions. Certainly not instructions that other people have written for me, but I'm not following instructions even that I wrote for me. I sometimes do. But it is relatively rare that I test with instructions and procedures that other people, or even myself, has carefully formalized. Instead, I do informal testing based on many patterns, which I can put into words, and I can explain, and I can defend. So what I want you to think about is, where is the testing? And all that I've just shown you is the testing in the data file, is the testing in the keys that I pressed. And my argument is that the actual testing happens in the mental activity in my mind as I interact with the product. That's testing. And that cannot be automated. It is a purely human process. It can be supported with tools in amazing ways, in just the same way that we don't automate the building of skyscrapers, but we certainly have guys in cranes that are operating machinery and cranes and digging machines and all this stuff. We need our machinery to build skyscrapers. But no one says, oh, if you have trouble putting into words what your testing is, don't worry. What it means is you haven't practiced this. It takes a lot of practice to get good at explaining your testing while you're doing the testing. It's a skill, and you've got to develop that skill over time. And so I have my narrative and explanation. That is proceeding over time as I do the testing. I'm enacting my specific test ideas over time. I'm developing my knowledge of the product, and I'm using my knowledge of the product over time as I perform this. I have my role on the project, and I'm using my role. I'm talking to people within my role. I'm thinking, what does someone in my role do? I'm applying my knowledge and my talents and my temperament. All of this is happening during my testing performance. So from the time I say I'm going to do testing to the time I say it's time to test something else, all these layers of performance are occurring. Now they're occurring no matter whether you're a junior tester or whether you're a senior tester. They're occurring whether you're aware of them or not. If you give me a tester who doesn't have certain talent, or they're afraid of certain things, maybe they don't like mathematics, and I give them a task to do that requires them to analyze something mathematically, they won't be able to perform. They need to learn that skill or get over that aversion, or they won't be able to do it. All of these things have to be working in order for good testing to happen. So to formalize this a little bit, I see that there are 4 threads in every performance that anyone does in the technical world. Commitment, preparation, performance, and delivery. And they are simultaneous. I am simultaneously committing, preparing, performing, and delivering. Now, here is what the ideal situation is. Ideally, my commitment takes 1 minute. You tell me to do something, I go, yes, I'm going to do it. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I commit to that. And then preparation is ideally super fast. What do I need to do to get prepared? You know, turn up my brain to 9,000 RPM. Ready to go. And then I perform. Bam. And I'm performing at high efficiency immediately. That's ideally, right? And then I deliver at the last minute. Whatever that is, I will deliver it. Bam, it's perfect the first time. Okay, so if you ask somebody to, like I asked Smita, could I have some coffee? That's how she got me coffee. She instantly said, yes, certainly. And her preparation took her instants, moments. And then she performed it by telling the guy to get me coffee, and he just performed it, and then he delivered my coffee. Very, very simple. But this is what it's like in real life when you're doing technical work. It isn't just, okay, I'm going to do that for you. It's more like if you ask me to do something, I'll go, yes, I am willing to do that. And it goes on my stack of 20 things that I'm constantly shuffling and deciding which thing I'm going to do in a moment. But if you come to me in 10 minutes and say, so when are you going to do it? I go, oh, you really want me to do it? Like, soon, okay. So my commitment goes up. And I start saying, what can I postpone? And I push other things down. And I begin to actively prepare. I say, well, what do I need to do this? I need this thing. When I came into this country, I went to the passport control people, and I waited in line. And I went up to the thing, and I gave him my visa. And he said, you must fill in a form. I'm like, well, what form? I didn't see any sign that says fill in a form. And he goes, it's a form that looks like this, and it's back there. So I look back, and I have to go all the way outside to the back of the line again. So I go back to the back desk. There are no forms. It's completely empty. There's no forms there. So then I walk all the way past everybody in the line to the front again. I'm like, sorry, there's no forms back there. And the guy shrugged and fished around and gave me a form. He didn't say, oh, they're out of forms? Oh, let's take care of that because 600 people are going to ask me the same question. Instead, he was like, okay, here's your form. Get out of here, right? So I filled it out, and while I was there, someone else came up looking for a form, and there's no forms. You got to ask the guy. This is an example of people who are not committed. Like this is, I don't know. They must feel very disrespected at the passport control place. They must feel like nobody cares about us, so we're going to screw everybody else. Because I have never seen customs people less interested in making the line move efficiently than I saw. Maybe they like it. Maybe they take bets. I'm like, I bet I can make my line move slower than yours and make it look like an accident. Oh yeah, the bet's on. So, no preparation, no commitment. Just wait till somebody waits in a line, and then when they get it wrong, say, haha, you got it wrong. All right, so anyway, this is more what it really looks like. Is commitment doesn't happen all at once. It happens kind of over time because we've got lots of different things we're committed to doing, and we're constantly adjusting our commitment. And then preparation happens over time because some preparations take a while to do, and also because some preparations are expensive, so you don't want to do them before you have to. And then performance is uneven because you keep getting pulled off onto other projects and distracted by different things. And delivery doesn't happen just all at the end, but probably it's better if you deliver a little bit in the middle just to find out, did I understand this correctly? So in case you don't, you can rectify that. In other words, testing performance is not a situation where you say, first I'm going to write down exactly what I'm going to do and I'm never going to change it. That's not how it works. Nobody who does good testing operates that way. I would say there's lots of people who operate that way, but they are not doing good testing. I have many times in my career had clients come to me and say, we want to pay you all this money and you have to write all these test cases. And I go, no, I won't do that. But you're paying you money. You have to do it. And I say, it's because you're paying me money that I can't do it. If you would let me do it for free, I'd be happy to do useless work that will have to be thrown away later on. But because you're paying me money, I have to do good work. And I'm not going to write down formal test procedures and test cases before I've played with your product. Because I know from long experience that if I formalize my testing before I've played with your product in the lab, before I've seen it actually work, that I'm going to have to rip up all those procedures and rewrite them. Or worse, I won't rip them up. I won't rewrite them. They'll all be wrong, and I'll shrug and go, I just don't have time to rewrite them, and they don't want to pay me to rewrite them, so I guess I'll just leave them all as cruddy, horrible test cases. Well, that's not good enough for me, because I have pride in my work, and I hope you have pride in your work too. And if you have pride in your work, if you stand behind what you do, then that's not good enough for you. Because you know someone's going to look at those test cases later on and say, James Bach wrote these test cases? They're horrible. I don't want anyone to say that about me. So I tell my clients, I've had many of these arguments with my clients, like, no, I am not going to do that. I am not going to write down these procedures. I will at some point, if you want me to. I'll document my testing in different ways. I might even document my test procedures very rigorously, but only when it is economically reasonable to do so, only when it is ethically reasonable to do so, not just because you tell me to do stuff. Why is it that testers all over the world, but it happens a lot in India, so many testers come to me and say, I have to do this because my manager said I have to do it. Are you children? No, we're adults. Maybe it's just an American attitude, but our attitude in America is I may work for you, but that doesn't mean I'm your child. I'm a professional, I have pride in my work, and I'm not going to do bad work just because a manager says, do bad work now. I'm paying you, you have to. I'm not your slave. I'm going to operate in reasonable ways. And my name is attached to what I do. I make sure of that. And I want my name to stand for quality. Now, it is true that sometimes it is very reasonable to do lower quality work because of time considerations, because it's not worth doing super high quality work. That's true. So you have to, I am flexible. The only time I say no, I won't do it, is when I feel like I'm dealing with someone who's too drunk to drive and they're demanding that I give them the car keys so that they can drive their vehicle off the road and into the river. You know, that's when I say no, I won't do it. Other times I'll say, are you sure you want me to do it? Because it's not going to be very good work. Are you sure that's okay with you? And if they go, yeah, under these circumstances, this will be good enough, then I'll go, all right, I wish I could do my best work, but this is certainly work that's not going to be a waste of your time and money. So every tester has to be taking care of their performance. But where's the test cases here? Some people would say, looking at a test performance of commit, prepare, perform, and deliver, that the test cases, or I should say the testing, they would say the testing is embodied just in the test procedures. They'd say that's the testing. Other people would say that it's just the interaction with the product which is testing. And other people like me would say the testing is the whole thing. The testing is the entire equation of my commitment, my preparation, all of that is testing. I do find it useful to make this distinction. I say there's testing, and then I say there's performing tests. And those are two different things. Testing includes all the studying I do, all the learning I do to get ready to perform tests on a product. So I don't actually have to see the product to be doing testing. It's all part of the testing. But when I say I'm performing tests, to me, that implies I'm looking at the product right now and I am hunting for bugs in the product. So performing tests is inside the great thing. So the performing test stuff is that part. And then that's inside the bigger testing envelope, which includes everything. Here's my definition of a test case based on all the definitions I've seen out there. Obviously, I don't use the same vocabulary as the ISTQB. I think that we can do better than that. So based on all of my experience and looking at different ways that the word test case is used, I think it's most reasonable to call it a set of ideas, instructions, or data designed to aid testing some product in some way. It's a nice general description of what a definition of what a test case is. I've seen lots of different things that people have pointed to and said that's a test case. Thank you. And this process cannot be written down. It cannot be encoded. The process of testing cannot be encoded into test cases. That's the major thing I want to say about that. Because of what's called tacit knowledge. I only have 5 minutes left, so I just want to leave you with this image. This will be my last slide. Much of the work we do into the technical world, in the parenting world, in the childing world as we behave as children, in the social world, is based on tacit knowledge. You need to learn this term, tacit knowledge. Tacit means unspoken knowledge, unwritten knowledge, unpictured knowledge, tacit knowledge. And when I talk to testers who've had any experience testing, and I say, how do you test? They usually don't have very good words for it. But often when I watch them test, I see that they're quite sophisticated. I was testing with Smita about it. Real skill in testing is unspoken and intuitive. It's like crab fishing pots under the ocean. You can't see them, but they're down there, and they're catching the crabs for the fishermen. But what can you see? What you can see is the floating buoys on the top of the water. Those buoys are the explicit part of the knowledge, like the name of the technique, like equivalence class partitioning, the name of the technique. The words that we use to describe our testing are explicit, but our testing is not encompassed and encoded in the words that we use. It's beyond that. That means the way you learn testing is by practicing testing and then by practicing talking about it, which is like having a buoy attached to each of your skills. That's what I do with people. What I'm worried about is when you get ISTQB certified, for instance, all they do is give you a bunch of brightly colored floats, but they don't actually teach you how to fish. And they don't even care if you know how to fish. They just want to know, do you fill out the 40 questions? You know, that means that you recognize these terms, at least today. You'll forget them tomorrow. So you could fake your testing knowledge. You could put a bunch of terms in your CV, and then the floats would just float away, and you wouldn't be fishing for anything. Or you can have no floats at all and not know how to talk about testing at all, but be really good at it. And then you can just go, oh, I found a bug. I'm good at testing. And I go, how did you test? Krishna came to me in a dream and told me, he said boundary testing. You know, so I gave me a vision. I saw a vision of the boundaries of the world, and Krishna took me to... I love the Bhagavad Gita, so I'm not making fun of it. I actually was greatly guided by it as a young man. And Arjuna asking all these questions of Krishna really inspired me. So I'm trying to help too. So what I want is I want you to be able to talk about testing without thinking that your words are encoding testing. They're representing testing, but they're not encoding it. And if you understand that, then you know that you can't just say a test case to another tester and have them be doing the same testing that you are doing. What you'll have to do if you want to communicate testing from one person to another is demonstrate that testing, is to test with that other person. Or, if you know that the other person has all the same kinds of experiences that you do, then you can give them clues in writing about what they can do, and they'll look at your writing and go, oh, I know what that means. And they will understand your test case. But that's based on their tacit knowledge. We testers need to get a lot better at understanding and conveying tacit knowledge to each other. And tacit knowledge is not conveyed in words, it's conveyed in shared experiences. That's how we do it. That's why I think we need more apprenticeship in testing and less certification. So that's, I have to dig at ISTQB because there's an ISTQB guy here, and I have to tease him. That's his cross that he must bear. All right, that's all the time I have for talking about this. I hope you will think of testing as a performance that you do, and not as some collection of test cases that you are some sort of robot that is processing. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the conference today. Now it's time for the next guy, right?